Welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? Wow. I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. And with me today, I have my co-host Tim Ryan, lead man at startwheel.org. Thank you so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show each and every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business, no matter the climate. It's nice and warm today. Follow along and share your thoughts and journey with us using hashtag Fervent4. From military police officer to real estate expert with Nicole Campbell is coming up in just a moment. The Fervent 4 is powered by the SBDC, which helps local small businesses grow through counseling and resources like this show. If you are interested in learning more on how the SBDC can help your business, head to startwheel.org/weekly. Welcome to the show, and thanks for tuning in. Welcome.
Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Greetings. What's, I once learned that the worst thing to ask someone as a first question was to talk about the weather. I don't know why. And as the king of icebreakers, I feel like maybe we should ask the question. So, Nicole, what do you think about the weather recently? Are you a summer-ish type of person, a winter-ish type of person? What do you think about the weather?
I'm a summer person, and yesterday was amazing. Today, I haven't been outside yet, but I think it looks like it's probably amazing as well. So, yes, I am all about the heat. And what is it? Okay, perfect.
87 degrees.
That's perfect. I don't like the rain. I don't like the cold. I literally will wear a huge parka when it's like less than 60 degrees outside. So, yeah,
Wow.
I don't like the...
That sounds aggressive.
It is. It's quite funny, actually.
When you did your marathon a few years ago, what was the weather for that?
I kind of tried to forget about that day, honestly, because it was so terrible. But it was.
You're talking to. This is the group of marathoners here.
Yeah.
Right.
So you guys know, but you keep doing it. So
No. Hold on. Tim keeps doing it.
Okay.
I have done it once.
Okay.
And said I will probably do another. But there's a big difference between me and the man who currently is trying to run the entire I-81 across Virginia.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. But
So
yeah,
what was the weather that day?
that day it was probably in the high 80s, low 90s, something probably similar to this. And there were a lot of hills, so that didn't help either.
Which marathon was this?
It was the Marine Corps Marathon in DC.
Okay, got it.
So you're a real estate expert, and we'll get into that, commercial real estate expert. We'll get into that in a second. But do you feel like there is a certain time of year that people are looking at moving more than others?
Well, in our area, especially, it's the summertime and the wintertime because we are a huge military population here. And so it just seems like that's when the PCS cycle starts, the permanent change of station. And so that is kind of something that is unique maybe to the military, but then also I guess if people were moving in general, maybe they want to wait till their kids are out of school and or have some large break in that and would maybe wait until the summertime.
So both you and Tim are I don't know, former military, is that the right way to say it?
Yep.
Nicole, you were too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that they don't tell you, there is no perfect time when things move. It just happens to be sometimes in those time frames, or could it be at any time?
It could be any time. But then if you have kids and you're in the military a little bit longer, they usually try to, well, in my experience in the Army, I don't know what service you were in, Tim, if it was different, but they tried to kind of work with us and let our kids finish the school year and then do the moving at that point.
It's funny because in a Navy town, we got an Air Force person and an Army person. How wonderful.
Yeah, we're the best.
Hashtag beat Navy, right?
Exactly.
So what got you into real estate to start?
To start, it was because I was a military spouse. We were at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I needed a job. And I saw that there was a transaction coordinator job, and I had no background in real estate. I just knew I needed to be doing something. So I took that on. And as I learned the business, I really fell in love with real estate. And so then I got my license. I became the director of sales and marketing for a new construction real estate team there in Fayetteville. And then when I moved to Virginia Beach, I started working in residential real estate when I got here as well. But then I transitioned into commercial real estate several years ago because it was just something, as much as I love real estate, I found that my passion was a little bit different direction than helping people buy houses. So I got onto the commercial side.
Got so you started in the residential side of it and realized that commercial was how did you figure that out for yourself from the commercial side of it?
Somebody actually suggested it to me. A friend of mine I was talking to, and I was thinking about maybe doing something completely different. I didn't know what to do. And he said, based on your personality, maybe you should look at commercial real estate, because people make decisions in commercial real estate more based on the bottom line instead of that emotional decision that's in residential when people are buying a house. And, I just put some thought into it after he mentioned that. And I was like, well, yeah, I love real estate. I'd hate to get out of it just because I'm not feeling super passionate about helping people get over that wall color whenever they walked into the house, getting past the fact that somebody else sat on that toilet before, and those types of things whenever they were purchasing a house.
So is it fair to say that residential real estate is more emotional decisions? Is that what you're saying than commercial real estate, which is very much just black and white? Like,
so interestingly enough, commercial real estate does have some of that emotion tied to it, especially what I do in office leasing and sales, because you have people like the employees who will be basically living in that office space 8 hours a day. So that part of it is an emotional side. But then when it comes down to who's paying the rent, the business owner, then that is really black and white. And so that's what I kind of gravitate towards, is those types of decisions. But yes, residential real estate, and it should be an emotional decision. It's your house, it's where you're going to live. And so it's just, that is so much a part of it. And it wasn't something that I really enjoyed dealing with so much. Nothing wrong with it at all. It was just my personality didn't necessarily mesh with that.
What was the most difficult thing that you experienced transitioning from residential to the commercial side?
Well, it was that I'm not from this area, and people who've been in commercial real estate, it seems like they start off doing that right out of college, and they are local and they know everybody. And that's a huge thing. It's a relationship business. And so since I was new to the area and new to the business, I didn't have those connections. So that was the most difficult thing. And I feel like, start off a smart way of learning the business, which was to be an administrator first for a commercial firm. And I learned that behind the scenes and the paperwork and the lingo, and heard the phone conversations. But when it came time to actually building relationships, I had been sitting behind a desk for so long. So that was just really difficult to say, hey, everybody, here's what I'm doing, and here's why you should hire me to help you. But nobody knew who I was. It's
interesting that you say that, because when I hear that, I think all these people who, when desperation mode happens, when and whatever that is, right? That's when they start building relationships. That's when they reestablish and talk with more people. When it seems like if you were doing that as an ongoing cycle, when that desperation time comes up, you would be able to, it's easier for you to then go in and be like, hey, I need a favor at this point, than trying to, hey, my name is Zack Miller. Let's talk for a little bit. Oh, and by the way, I just met you, and now I want you to give me this big thing. And so like, is that something that was taught to you? Is that something that you just learned by listening from some of those phone calls, or how did you understand that that was something that you needed to get into to start building those relationships up?
Nobody told me that. I think it's just inherent. It should be anyway, knowing that you can't just, let me put it like this. If you've gotten a sales call from somebody who they barely introduce themselves and then they just jump right into, hey, buy this thing, that's not how I would want to do things. I don't appreciate that. I don't enjoy that. I would not give my business to somebody doing that type of thing. So I just knew, if I don't like that, then the people that work with me probably aren't going to like it either. I need to build relationships to make that happen.
But as a LinkedIn superstar, which you have definitely become, how many messages do you get that start like that?
I would say,
let's say in a percentage, actually.
Yeah, percentage, 50%.
No way. It is not that low.
Well, I do a pretty good job of making sure who I connect with are, they're relevant. So
okay. So
some slip through.
Okay. So you don't accept everyone that LinkedIn requests you, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. So I do, because I like to respond back with just simply, yo. Which, if you know me, like, that's how I talk anyway, right? Like, I just want to talk to people. So like when someone spams me as a first message, like, hey, I just met you. Now buy my thing. It's $50,000. I'm like, yo. You know what's funny? The majority of the time, they never respond back.
Right. Because they don't know how to follow
up. If you wanted to buy their thing, they probably wouldn't respond back.
But who is teaching these people these methods?
I don't know.
I would assume someone that's out of touch, that is some old school person that says these are the number of touch points that you have to hit every single day.
But no, absolutely. But you can touch point and make those from a quantity standpoint that are quality, that get far better results than these things that are just spam after spam after spam. I mean,
well, it turns into they probably have a quota, and the sales manager has said you have to make 100 touch points or 100 calls, and that's all they're worried about, is making the numbers.
Yep. So yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's about the metrics, and it's like the garbage metrics going in, it's garbage metrics going out.
So isn't it bad leadership in that case then? Because that leader doesn't understand the relationship building side of it?
Because they're so, it's a numbers game, and that's all that they think about. And so because there'll be something that falls out. So they'll say, oh yeah, it takes 200 times, 200 phone calls, and you'll get 2 responses and you'll get 1 meeting. Well, yes, maybe.
But adding a little bit of due diligence on that, adding a little bit of friendly flair on that could increase those numbers to get there as well. I think we all believe that, like, you have to touch things many times. Let me rephrase that. I think we all believe that you have to make multiple interactions with someone that to get them to come from a visitor first learning about you to a customer. But that doesn't mean you have to be such a BS being thrown out there. That's
the rookie thing is before you do anything. But in the sense that you're supposed to prospect before you even make that initial contact, to at least determine if there's some sort of a need. I mean, how many emails I get every day asking about, hey, do you want a website? It's like, dude, we do that stuff. Why prospect?
And we got an email yesterday, my partner and I, from somebody who said, oh, I saw your multifamily listing and something. And we're like, we don't even deal with multifamily at all. Like a really, really quick search would have told you that.
Do you? Okay, so I actually usually call people out on these things too, right? So if someone is trying to make the multiple touch points, not only do I just respond back with yo, is oftentimes if someone clearly is copying and pasting something. This happened to me recently, where my name was mistaken for someone else's, right? So like, let's say that someone was emailing Nicole and they put Zack, or vice versa, and I'd be like, "Who's Nicole?" And they're like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," and I'm just like.
Well, it's the same thing that happened with Steph Curry.
What he did? Oh, yeah. Have you heard this story, Nicole?
No, I haven't.
Tim?
Well, I want to make sure I got it right, because he was signed with Nike, correct?
Somehow between Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, something like that.
Yeah.
They changed when they went in for the.
They wanted to give him a pitch to give him a
different
deal.
Company that he was working with was getting a Steph Curry pitch.
Yeah. And the PowerPoint, they forgot to change the name. And so it was whatever athlete.
Kevin Durant. And then I think they even called him Steven.
Yeah.
So this man is probably going to potentially bring you $500 million in dollars. $500 million in dollars. Yes, Zach, that's what dollars and dollars are. $500 million in revenue. And you.
Yeah. So he signed with Under Armour.
Or whoever. Yeah. Is that who he's with?
Yeah.
So who put that out there? How did
he did at some point get pissed off? I think he.
Yeah. It's a good point, because then it makes you say, well, if they would do something like that and not pay attention, in a big thing like that, then what are they doing with the small details, you know?
Right.
Well, isn't that why Michael Jordan ended up signing with Nike? Because his agent liked what Nike was doing with tennis players, making them more of a brand.
Correct.
Or something like that.
Because Michael Jordan wanted to go to Converse, but his mother...
Adidas.
Well, I just watched the episode last night of
Converse. Are you sure? I thought
that was he wanted. That's what, like, Dr. J and all those guys were all with Converse, but
his parents told him, or somehow,
his mom told him to go to Nike. At least have the meeting.
Right. So we're talking about building a brand, and that's something that you, Nicole Campbell, the real estate megastar, commercial real estate megastar, and hashtag the 757. So tell me about brand building, like 101 to you. Like, what is brand building to someone who, as you, even a year ago, really had no notoriety to your name? People really didn't know you as this. And then we look at 12 months later, people not only know who you are, but you're on this magnificent show.
Well, so number one is to just be yourself and figure out a way to connect with people that shows that you're knowledgeable in what you do and that you are a human being and that you can, a lot of mine has been because I can laugh at myself and I make mistakes and I don't shy away from that. And so I think really honestly, it comes down to just being yourself and figuring out which platform it is. Where are your customers? Where do you feel comfortable posting whatever it is that you're going to post, all that content, and being consistent with it. And so I don't think I'm necessarily in everybody's face, but I do hear all the time that people say, I've seen this video that you posted, or that this was something that was very informative, and thank you very much for posting that. Or a lot of times I get like, oh, you are just a normal person, and I feel like I could work with you because I see your true self. So I think that's just the first thing, is figuring out where you need to be, where's your audience, and then how can you make sure that they see who you are.
How did you decide that? Because I think at this point, most people that are saying that they see you is from LinkedIn. Is that fair? So how did you decide that that was the place to, that was the sandbox to play in?
Because first I saw that there weren't a ton of other commercial real estate brokers active on the platform, and especially in my market. And then I also saw that there were a lot of business owners or potential business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs who were there who could maybe introduce me to other folks. So it looked like it was just my people who were there already. And it wasn't that I would have to manufacture an audience. I've tried to do some stuff on Instagram and Facebook, but it's just the audience isn't there for me. And the other part of it is, again, you have to enjoy being there. And if you don't enjoy it, then you're not going to show up every day and you won't be consistent. So I like that platform for myself.
I think that's really interesting. And what I really took out of that too is you recognize that your, I hate this word, competitor isn't really playing in that space. So that was an opportunity or an avenue for you to capitalize on. But then also the people that you are trying to have see you do play there and are very active. And so it's really interesting that you were able to articulate and be curious enough to find those people in there, even though they're very, it's just very interesting that you were able to articulate that. As you were just saying, you're transparent. You sometimes you can't figure out what to say, and I just couldn't figure out what to say. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna end of the sentence. Who needs a comma anyway?
Yeah, that stuff is really interesting. And you're playing that to your advantage, Nicole, which is really awesome. I mean, if you look at like some of the challenges that these A-list celebrities face right now in terms of like with Instagram and Twitter or Facebook or whatever, that their fans feel like they have a relationship with them because they're posting so much. Well, you're doing that from the business sense that even though you may not have met someone that is looking for office space, you showing your vulnerable side, you're establishing that relationship with someone, and you haven't even met that person yet. So then when you do meet that person, they feel comfortable with you. And so that's awesome. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's definitely not an overnight thing. And it's something that's trial and error. And right now, I don't know that I've posted for the past 3 or 4 days, because I've just been in a point where I didn't feel like I had relevant content to post. And so that's the other struggle too, is that making sure that when you do put stuff out there, that it's relevant or informational, or, you know, just something that it's not going to be a bunch of junk. So I definitely go through those moments. So I don't want people to think that I'm a machine and that I just constantly crank out content, because that doesn't happen. And I also don't have somebody creating the content for me, which I think you can tell sometimes when people pay someone else to do that, because you can, then when you do meet them, you're like, wait a second, this is not how you come across when I've seen you before, or the other types of things that you post. So
yeah, can you imagine if I started posting like stuff and then I showed up in a suit? That, I mean, that's basically right. That's basically what you're saying.
Right, exactly.
So like an interesting story about that, like a true story, is when I started doing my TV show a few years ago, which I guess I don't do anymore. But so in 2015-ish, I guess, is when I did that. I was literally in the meeting with the TV station, and I'm in jeans and a t-shirt. And I literally said, and by the way, it took about 2 months to even convince the TV station to think that I was even remotely capable of doing this. And obviously I was. That's why it was wonderful, given the position. But literally during it, then I was like, I'm also not going to wear a suit, because I'm not going to just change my ways, change my brand, because I got this new opportunity. I felt that that was really, really important for me, that the brand that I built before, I was going to have continuity with that. And I think a lot of people will say, oh, well, Zach, you're the only person on TV that didn't have a suit. That's unprofessional. It's this. It's like, well, hold on. Have you even peeled back an onion a little bit to realize that for the last 10 years, I've been building this brand off of who I am, and I have a ton of track record to show that? Why don't you be curious and investigate on some of that stuff? So I appreciate and respect the fact that you do that from that perspective, because I think a lot of people won't be transparent. They'll try to be very fake. And even if they do, quote unquote, make it, it's just not the same.
Right.
How did you decide that it was okay to do that?
So I don't have anybody do my content for me, but I started by hiring a content coach. And she really helped me figure out, well, what do I need to say, and what type of person I am, and how that needs to come across. And so she kind of just coached me and built me up and said, you know what, here's what people are responding to, and so do more of that. Or, you know, figuring out then if people aren't responding to that, how do I change things up so that it is still me, but it gets a better response from everyone. And so that was really important, because I came from a place where I'd never done anything like this before. I'd never posted videos beyond, you know, maybe some videos of my kids or something on Facebook. I never really created anything like that. So it took somebody to kind of be my cheerleader and say, yes, this is what can work, and then seeing what did work, and then just keeping me on that track. So that was important for me. I know that everybody has an opportunity to do something like that, and maybe they don't have someone in their life that could do that beyond. Maybe it's a coworker or a family member who can just say, yes, just keep going, and, you know, whatever's working, just be that cheerleader for them so that they can keep it up. Because it's difficult to get past sometimes seeing yourself in the video, hearing your voice, or, you know, making a mistake and feeling like you didn't give your best effort or something. But I think having that person, whoever it is, to help you just kind of continue on is important.
Yeah, super huge. And Zach and I, we've been doing the show a couple of months now. We're on month 2. And one of the things that continues to come up show after show is vulnerability, and being strong enough to show that you are vulnerable. And it's powerful if you use it the right way and set your ego aside. It's amazing what you're able to accomplish. And really the root of your success and what you've done thus far is not being afraid to show your vulnerable side. So again, 2 thumbs up.
Thank you.
Oh,
2 of them. That's awesome. Wait, 4?
6 thumbs
that was 4.
To piggyback off that, Tim. So what's interesting is when people hit that wall, if you will, right? That, oh, I don't want to post this. oh, I'm not getting the engagement that I want. Oh, I'm not making the money that I want. This person isn't responding to me the way that I want. I actually think that those things are great for business because that's where you find the winners and losers. And I like to use those words, and I like the sports vernacular because I think that it's very important. A lot of these things are just practice to get you in there, or they're just a play in the game, if you will. And so are you doing things emotionally, mentally, physically to push you through when you have challenging times? Like I do a lot of fitness stuff because it helps me from a business perspective to be like, well, if I could do a marathon, I could clearly email this person this thing. Like, are you doing anything from are you doing anything else other than business to kind of help fuel your motivation and resiliency?
So for me, music is really big, and I don't know why, it just is an emotional connection for me. So a lot of times it could be one of those days where I am kind of in a funk, and I put on the music that I really enjoy and I listen to it, and I crank it up, and that is able to kind of get me out of that. And so that, I guess that's an emotional part of it. And then the fitness side, I'm really working on that because you're right, it is so important. And it's one of those things where if you're out of the fitness side of things and you get away from it for even a week, I think you can see it in somebody and you can kind of feel it. And I know I carry myself a little bit differently on the days that I have gone. And so I've set up a gym in my garage because of coronavirus. And so on the days that I'm able to get in there and work out, I feel so much better for the whole day. And that comes across. And whenever you're talking to people on the phone, you just stand up a little bit taller, just little things like that. So I definitely feel a difference. I need to be better and get more consistent on the fitness side of things. So what's your secret, Zach? Because I know you said you work out every day.
Well, you're looking at the other guy who instigated that.
Oh,
that
okay.
that started. So as a former fat kid, I can say that. Oh Lord. So I started working out January 2nd of 2018. The date's irrelevant. It really doesn't matter. I just happen to know that. And it's not because I had a New Year's resolution. So let's dispel that too. So I think I'd worked out like 2 or 3 days. And Tim and I are really close. And I remember him saying something like, yeah, well, I've run two miles a day for the last 3 years or something at the time. And I was like,
my 6-year birthday is on Saturday.
Okay. So it would have been 3.5, 4 years. And so I was like, that's interesting. So no days off. That means I don't have to figure out, okay, I have to work out these 4 days a week. What am I going to do on the other 3 days? I just do something physical every single day, right? Some days are clearly harder than others, right? Like some days there's Ironman workouts in there. Some days there's a lot less work than like a marathon or anything like that. But the whole idea is just you got to do it every single day, right? And so it's like almost like taking that time off is actually bad for the habit. So you keep doing it. And so I got to like 30 days and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I just kept doing it. And so I'm a big, big, big believer in the no days off mentality. I think that you even said a couple of days, like, I think it screws up everything. Like Tim's almost at 6 years. I can't imagine being at 6 years and being like, yeah, I'm gonna take a day off. What happens if you then go 6 years without working out? And I think that's Tim's biggest.
I don't know. I'll never find out. I mean, the thought of taking a day off is it just would never happen.
But it seems so ridiculous. Like, how to get more energy? Go burn off a ton of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense yet. By working out and using more energy, you get better. So I think the fitness aspect of that is really, really important. I think consuming a lot of material from people who have been there before, it can be very, very valuable as long as you then act on something that you've learned. Yeah. I think a lot of people can consume and then never do anything with it. There's a book by Ramit Sethi, and I think he said something in it. I believe he's the person who said this. Something along the lines of, if you get one nugget out of every piece of material that you consume, that nugget it can be very, very powerful. And so constantly be looking for those nuggets. And I think the idea was like, if you buy a $20 book and you got one nugget out of it, then that can be, a huge concept. So to me, it's like the no days off concept is that one kind of principle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're looking for things like that, I think that can be very valuable. Act on stuff, and then don't over flood your days with like nonsense. Like learn how to say no to things that are just rubbish. Never said that word out loud before. Rubbish. So wonderful. And then, realize probably that Taylor Swift is right and haters are going to hate. It's fine.
Yeah. And I think that's important too about just gleaning information from all over the place. And so I really like
just get that information, not do anything with it, because there's a lot of people who just do that.
Right. So, and then where you get it from is important too. So if you're always listening to the same podcast day in and day out, or you don't experience any kind of information from other industries, or, because there's so much out there that maybe it's not directly involved with what you do, but you can find something that maybe nobody else is doing because you looked outside of your little bubble. So yes, absolutely.
And validate the people who you consume to make sure that they actually aren't just regurgitating someone else. Right. And so you don't go to your dentist asking them a business question. You ask them to fix your mouth.
Right.
But a lot of people will take business advice from people who have never done anything in business. And I think that can be very catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tim?
Zach?
You gonna take a day off at six years in one day?
Well, I mentioned to you, I was like, gosh, if I qualify for Boston, I'm going to take a day off and break my streak, and I still couldn't do it. So I don't know. Maybe after I run Boston, maybe I'll take a day off. I don't know. But the thought of starting from zero again is just, man, it crushes me. So I couldn't do it.
And I've been there. So that starting from zero is miserable. So definitely don't do it.
Well, the compound interest of these things is so valuable. And I think that we learn about compound interest from a financial standpoint in school, but not the compound interest of everything else in your life, and how it really does build a bigger, better thing, a personal brand, a business brand, a fitness brand, a fitness cycle, repetition with family members and friends. Like, the more you talk to someone, probably the better friends you are with that person. Like, that thing compounds. Right. The more you do, the more you ride your bike, probably the more comfortable you'll be on that. And so I think kind of what you were saying, where look at other industries, but also like look at things in your life that you're consuming and doing, and figure out like, okay, how could I take that concept and organize this thing in my business and life to use that to be stronger? And I think most people say, oh, I need to do this business thing because it's business. It's like, well, hold on. What can I do over here that I can learn from a business perspective, or vice versa, business to life, et cetera? I think it could be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've gotten past the point of being able to separate business and life these days. Your personal and business should be kind of intertwined, and not in a bad way, but it's just, you should put your personal stuff into your business. It's going to make things better, I think. And
people fall in love with people.
What's that?
People fall in love with people.
Right, exactly. Right. So don't separate that out, and then use those business concepts, like you said, to somehow organize the personal side of things. And I think you'll be a better person for it. So.
Yeah, that's Zack and I just started this no negativity challenge, and so it's interesting what you bring up, in the sense that because before I would have this mindset of, I'm not going to connect with people I do business with on social media because do they really want to see the other side of the fun side of Tim, where he just lets loose? But then on the other side, it was, well, what if the relationship should go bad? And really what I learned and what I have taken away from this is that social media is just not the place to be posting all your negativity anyway. Not that, and I never do post it, but it's so that's my takeaway from this meeting here is, that you got to intertwine a little bit with people that you work and play with.
But I think you can use social media from just a DM perspective, right? Where you use that from like, that's probably what I primarily use social from. And people are like, Zack, but you post all the time. Yes, but I'm not on there all day consuming that information. Like, I can have conversations with people just in the direct messages. my favorite quote of all time, actually, I was telling someone this morning, is a quote from an Under Armour commercial with Michael Phelps. It's what you do in the dark that puts you in the light, right? So like, I don't need you guys to see the conversations I have with you, right? Like, I don't need to tell the world, hey, by the way, I had this conversation with Nicole yesterday and it was great. I don't need to share that with the world. Nicole saw that. And it's great that it was a one-to-one. The entire thing doesn't have to be 1 to 1,000, 1 to scale or whatever.
And that's where I find a lot of the, I guess, magic happens on LinkedIn, is that having that connection and then talking in the messenger. And it's so much more robust whenever you do that. And then whenever you finally get to meet that person face to face, now you've had this really good conversation. So you're absolutely right. We don't need to. And then when we meet in person at a coffee shop, I don't need to take a picture with you to prove like, oh, I'm hanging out with so-and-so, which I think is the part of things that, like, we do need to hold some things a little bit closer, and you don't have to share to the world like who you're hanging out with on a daily basis and what you did and what you talked about and whatever. I mean, there's going to be some relevant things that probably come out of your conversations, but I think then people will feel also a more connection, because it's like, oh, you shared this with just me, and we have that relationship where it's just us instead of the world knowing everything.
You mean the people who take the Brady Bunch style picture and post that on now, because that's like the Corona version of all this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are my favorite. Oh, I just said something negative. Oh. Tell Nicole that. So Tim and I are both reading Kevin Hart's new book, not his first book. Tim, tell her about the concept.
Well, I mean, the whole concept is, so we're taking, it's a 30-day challenge, a no negativity 30-day challenge. And so Zack and I are holding each other accountable. And if either of us were to say something negative, then the count goes back down to 1. So Zack made it, what, 2 hours?
And how are you doing, Tim?
I think that I'm 2 hours to the good at this point. At least I hope so. You can. So we'll see how everything works out.
The concept is, it was complaining about something. It wasn't even negative. It was complaining. But then, his first book is absolutely incredible, by the way. If you haven't read it, I would totally read it. It's hilarious and very powerful and meaningful at the same time. But he's talking about more like the power of positivity instead of negativity. So if you like surround yourself with a bunch of negativity and you see a bunch of negativity, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've been living like this anyway. It's just sometimes I guess you sprinkle in, you see something and then you go on these tangents. It compounds in the bad way. And so he's basically like, well, I don't need to see that so-and-so, had a bad day. I don't want to see that. Why do I need to see that? I don't even know that person. And he says it in a far more articulate and funny way than Zack Miller could with his caveman hair and beard and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's powerful, right? Like, why hang out? Like, you wouldn't continue to hang out with negative people. But
no,
we do it online all the time.
And that's where even recently I said, I think I need to just take a break from Facebook, and because I think that's one of the places where a lot of it happens, and people just throw out this crazy nonsense that I'm thinking, would you say that to somebody's face? And if not, if you wouldn't feel comfortable saying something like that to their face, then why would you do it here? And then you're right. I mean, just seeing it all the time, even if you don't know that person, but then especially when you do, I think that is what is even more detrimental.
It's amazing. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because when the people that you know, and you maybe family members even, who say some of these things, I'm like, you're not helping.
They would say it behind closed doors. Right. They would not say to someone's face.
Yeah, and it's amazing how brave people are when they're on a keyboard as opposed to when you see them in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
or you could honestly just unfollow that information, not participate in it, and remove it from your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to do. I'm looking through my notes from you, Nicole, about our conversation that we had back on my podcast. If you guys haven't listened to that, go to Zack Miller Says wherever you listen to your audio podcast. That's Zack Miller Says. No, I didn't mean to say no. I want you to say yes. Like, go listen. Like that. See, that's like a Kevin Hart joke. Like
I was just about to say.
So you start listening to these people and then you talk like them. I believe one of and you're into like resolutions, if I remember. At least you were when I talked to you. You weren't going to drink this year,
right?
How's that going?
It's going great. I have not had any alcohol since at least the beginning of the year. I don't know that I even drank at the end of 2019. And I did that because I found that I had this crutch of going to networking events. And because I found out I'm not an introvert, I'm not an extrovert, I'm an ambivert, which is a real thing.
You learned that from my show, right? An ambivert?
I did. I learned that.
Which is a hybrid of extroverts and introverts.
Right. So I'm an ambivert. And when I go to networking events, I felt like I needed something to help me loosen up and have better conversation. And I don't think I ever went overboard, but I just felt like that wasn't helpful. And it's a lot of calories. So it would just kind of culminated in like, what can I do to kind of be completely focused on the person that I'm talking to at these events, that I can not worry about like having a drink in my hand and consuming extra calories. And so it's gone great. And coronavirus has helped because we haven't had in-person dealings, right? So I haven't had to really.
Well, if you're drinking at home, you wouldn't want to have to go to the store and get that drink.
Right. Well, true. And so I haven't, and I see people too, and nothing against them at all, but I mean, going through all these bottles of wine and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not spending money on wine. I'm not, drinking however many calories that it has in it and just putting that right to my hips or wherever it goes. And yeah, so it's been good. I also cut out coffee and caffeine, which
that one does not sound as much fun.
It's not. It's terrible. It's so bad.
So I learned last year, I think I had one too many dillies one night, and I went and tried getting on my bike the next day, and it was just like, I can't do this. So I was like, okay, when I'm training for a race, no alcohol. So I actually haven't had I haven't had a drink in a long time, months. I'm on the same like track as you, like definitely not this year and some into last year. And it's like, it's just easier, honestly. It's just like, whatever. But when I was on that bike, I was like, this ain't going to work. So, you got to do 10 miles of running, 50 miles on a bike, and you had one too many. You're just like, this ain't going to be fun. Sweating out like Bud Lights is not fun.
Yeah, good to see that.
Zack Miller, you drink Bud Light? How dare you? Whatever. So you think you'll go back in 2021?
I don't think so. I mean, there's really not a reason to be honest.
We have conflicting responses from people, by the way. Some people say 2020 would not be the year to not drink.
I've thought about that, and I thought, I should, maybe it would be helpful to get past some of this, but like the take no days off, as soon as you have one, then the next night.
Oh yeah. You go to networking events. You would figure out a way to happy hour on Zoom and.
Yeah. Absolutely. So and the people do the happy hour on Zoom, and I'll have my.
Well, that's the thing. That's like people legit.
My little bottle of water and that's it. But so cutting out the caffeine though has been the most difficult. And I just want to say that anybody who's ever tried to stop smoking or any kind of something like that, I can't imagine what you go through, because just cutting out caffeine, I still have headaches every day, constant. And I haven't had caffeine now probably since we started quarantine. And I could only do that because of quarantine, because I felt like when I would get up to go to work that I had to have it. Like I had to just start drinking coffee or take a caffeine pill to feel normal. And then I was ingesting caffeine throughout the day, and then I couldn't sleep at night, and it just was this terrible cycle. So
there are studies that say that drinking coffee immediately too actually does worse for you.
Yeah,
it does. It's not as effective than if you were to wait 60 to 90 minutes Now that's hard to do, obviously, as an avid coffee drinker myself, but.
Well, and so the fact that I'm still having withdrawals from it, though, that to me kind of give me some empathy for anybody who's trying to cut out anything else in their life. Because, I mean, honestly, I've seen some documentaries about people trying to kick drug habits and everything and how difficult that is. And I'm like, yeah, I can see it like this every day. I think about it. I just want to just smell it. The coffee, all these little things, and I'm thinking, man, this is just caffeine. I can't imagine what other people go through. So think about that if you know anybody who's trying to kick cigarettes or anything else.
Also, I think a lot of the people that you hang out with, as we're talking about kind of like building these communities of individuals, these tribes, that's my least favorite word, tribe. It's about surrounding yourself with good people, right, that are going to be supportive of that, right, and that want to be helpful. And so as cliche as it is, are the 5 people that you hang out with losers or are they winners, right? Are they going to help you or are they going to hurt you? If they're going to prevent you from doing what you want to do, then maybe you should remove that person from your life.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? You'll feel pretty good. Like you wouldn't keep dating. Hopefully you wouldn't keep dating someone that sucked, that you didn't like. You would remove them from the scenario. Lisa Marie Jones says she made a personal commitment to avoiding negativity and God, why did I pick this one to say out loud? Contentedness? Is that a real word? Contentiousness? Gosh, 2020 is the year where Zack Miller still can't read. So that's okay. So as someone who is trying to, this is interesting. So Rebecca says, they say sugar is as addictive as heroin. That's interesting. Sure it is. It's in everything. So
yeah.
For someone who's trying to be recognized, to be seen a little bit more, and as someone who, like we were saying a year ago, you were ultimately a nobody, right? No one knew who you were. What would be maybe your first tip or a couple of tricks to get people to start seeing you?
First would be just to know what you offer. Know what sets you apart from other people.
When you say offer, do you mean like what you actually sell, what people can buy from you?
Right. So what services you provide, and then I guess really what pain points those solve for people, because it should be more about how you're helping somebody else. And so understanding what services or product that you provide that will help someone and how does it help them? Because anybody who says, oh, my customer is anybody who's breathing. Well, that's not true. So you really have to dig down and figure out who is your real customer. And then you have to look at yourself and say, well, what is it about me that sets me apart from other people? Because there's going to be salespeople or people who provide this service or this product or whatever it is. And you have to figure out what differentiates yourself and then how to articulate that. So it's really kind of a exploration process in the beginning before
you couldn't say something either. I don't feel as bad.
Right. No, that happens all the time. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I post videos of me not being able to talk.
Oh yeah, they're fun.
So that would be the first part of it.
So let me deep dive into that a little bit more. So how do you not always? This is where I think people get messed up with this. How do you? So you know what you sell. You know the place where you want to hang out. You know the sandbox. You know who your target customer is. How do you not become that annoying salesperson then that just pushes out a commercial 24/7, but is on brand enough to then get that attention and engagement that they're looking for, which is ultimately what I think you've been able to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically finding information that would be helpful to someone. And so posting things that are educational and that you're not looking for anything in return. You're just looking to help people. And if it helps one person by giving some information about maybe some sort of topic, because what I'll do is I'll be talking to a potential client or customer and they'll ask a question. And I think, well, if they have that question, then a bunch of other people may have that question as well. So let me post about this to help people. And I'm not looking for anything in return. And I think that's, if anybody listens to Gary Vee, that's his big thing too, is just go out there with trying to help people and not expecting anything back from them. And that's where you're going to find more success. And if you genuinely do that, and there's people who will kind of pretend like they're trying to help, but then as soon as they finish talking, they go into the sales pitch. So it's being genuine about helping the people that you want to get in front of. Go ahead.
When is it appropriate then to make that sales pitch? Because I think, because then, you know, there's these lines you're saying, you know, genuine, there can be someone genuine, but genuinely I also want you to buy from me. Right.
Right. And I don't know if it's different in my business or not, but it's when people contact me and say either A, I'm ready to do something, or I know somebody who's ready to do something, and then just talking to them and asking a bunch of questions and then finding out, are they ready to transact? And if they are, then not being overly like, oh, well, then you got to work with me. It's just, I don't know. It goes back to not having that sales pitch and, you know, constant salesman attitude. So I don't know. I get people just calling me. So whatever I'm doing.
So it's, if you have enough information, you can then articulate a proposal of sorts in there, or like, when do you start pitching your service though in there? Are they just, because you've been doing all this other stuff, they're calling you then?
Right, because they already know that they want to work with me.
So you know, so once you get someone on the phone, that's when you feel okay with doing it?
Yeah, and I think it's because they've opened that conversation of, you know, I've seen what you've done, or somebody told me about you, and
I want to. So it's very clear that you're not in brand building. You're in, I'm going to secure you as a sale. Okay.
Right. Yeah, and so I think that's the part of it, that if you're good enough at putting yourself out there and people already know, then they're going to seek you out, and they're going to be the ones to say, okay, sell to me now. Like, how do I work with you? And if people don't do that, that's fine. But I don't know that in my business, you can necessarily relate that to maybe somebody who's selling solar panels or something. You know what I mean? Like, it could be that there's a very clear way that they need to sell to somebody that's a little bit different than me.
Because you have a longer period of time between?
Yeah, and I think just the product is different. So the product is me. And so I'm, as a landlord representative, trying to lease their space, then it's a relationship again. And it has to be that somebody enjoys working with me, and that they that we work well together with the communication, and that I listen to what they need from me, and that I provide that. So, I mean, I don't know. I didn't go through any like extensive sales training background or anything. I just know that this is what's worked for me. And I don't go into some big sales pitch. It's just like, here's how I can help you. And do you want my help?
What were the other tips that you were going to give?
What was I going to say?
If you can't remember, it's okay, because we went on a long rant there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a rant. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say after that.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the front end of establishing that relationship. So I'm curious on the opposite end. Not all businesses are going to succeed. You know, and then it comes time where, you know, how do you handle those situations where you've established the relationship, and now it's kind of a friend that you're like, they're late on payments, the business goes under, but contractually they're in a situation, you know, how do you handle those situations? Those are difficult conversations for people to have, and they don't go away with time. And I would love to hear what your insight is.
So I think just making clear that the relationship is as a friend, and how can I help, and kind of take it away from the business side of things. I'm trying to think of an example, if I've had that happen recently. So I've had some tenants who've had some issues with, basically, once they get into a space, and I had helped them get into the space and I represent them with that, but basically it's supposed to be whenever that happens and that they sign the lease, now they're in a relationship with the landlord and they maybe don't need me so much. But if they come across anything where it's like, you know, I'm having a hard time paying my rent, and then I just help them as much as I can and find resources for them. But I know I'm not going to get paid for many of that, but it's more about just keeping that relationship, I guess. So I don't know that I'm in the same situation where it's not that they wouldn't be paying me necessarily, or that I would have an issue where that business would kind of get in the way of that. And I just don't think with what I do that I would experience something on that level.
Gotcha. So you've never really been in a situation where you've done so much work to protect your brand. Do you feel that your brand is strong enough that you can handle, the relationships that you have with commercial real estate, the owners, that you're like, look, Nicole, we've had a couple bad ones. Is this something that you don't worry about because your brand is so strong now?
Well, but also too, it's a two-way street. And so if anybody ever said to me, like, this is not working out, then I don't take that personal, because there's enough groundwork laid that
Gotcha.
We've had that communication along the way. And if they aren't feeling like I'm doing the job that they want or expect, then it's not that I don't worry about it, because everybody wants to make everyone happy, but I definitely, like I said, just keeping those lines of communication open the entire time is what's key. Because if I'm blindsided with something, then that means I wasn't doing my job. So.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Rebecca says, connect with local influencers or not when it comes to building a brand. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's important so sometimes I'll tag Zack Miller on my LinkedIn post because I know that he has an audience. But I do it in a way where it's because I'm putting out meaningful information, or, I want somebody to look at his stuff too, because it's important that we support each other. And so I like to support my network. And so it's not maybe necessarily just influencers, but it's more people that I want to support and that I would hope that they would do the same for me. And I do it in a genuine way. It's not.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's givers and takers out there, and I think that the three of us are givers. So I would recommend, people should connect with influencers, but at the same time, you have to remember who's helping you along the way, and making sure that you give that shout out back. And you're not just taking, because as Zach and I have listened in our book, the thing that was really profound that Kevin Hart said was, when you're on your way to the top, you have to keep in mind that you're gonna revisit all those people on your way back down, if and when that ever happens. So
he said something, and I just remember that he said this, and I've thought this for a long time. It's easier to get to the top than it is to. It's easier to win the title than it is to stay the champ, basically.
That's right.
And I've said that for a long time, right? Like, it's easy to win, right? But if you can still win year after year after year, being like, that's what I think is so interesting about the Tom Brady's and the Michael Jordans of the world. It's not that they won once. It's not that they had one great season, right? People don't remember Emmitt Smith. Well, people do. Emmitt Smith's a bad. People don't remember Terrell Davis because he had one great season, right? They remember Tom Brady because for 20 years, no one could beat him. Yes, he lost in there, but he was the thing, right? Michael Jordan, the same thing. He goes away for 2 years. We know they would have won 8 in there, right? And so getting to the top is so much easier than staying relevant and all that stuff. And so as you continue to go up and to get to that top spot, Nicole, like, recognize that, like, it's going to be even harder to stay relevant through there, because it's something powerful, and it's something that it's very different too. You also figure out who your friends are, because then people you start to see that are like, never mind. I don't even know what to say to that. Like, just stay away from those people. Taylor Swift was right. Haters gonna hate. Do you have anything to say to that, or do you want me to move on?
No, I just saw a question.
Yeah, Mike Desher says, last week's guest, Nicole, do you spend more time looking for new clients or working with existing? So what do your day-to-days look like?
My day-to-day is definitely spending more time working with existing clients, and then just knowing that there's going to be an endpoint potentially with them when they sign a lease or they purchase the property. And so I need to have somebody else who's ready to transact at that time. But so for me, it's along the way that I'm looking for new clients is just that relationship building, because when I talk with someone in the beginning, it's probably not that they're ready to do anything at that moment. And so it's just building the relationship so that when they are ready to do something in a year or two or whenever that is, that they remember me and that I'm top of mind and they know to reach out to me. So, but definitely a bunch of times servicing the clients that I already have, because if I don't do a good job there, then I'm definitely not going to win any new clients. So that's super important in providing the best customer service that I can to the folks that are already working with me.
Customer service is that's the thing. So how did you figure out that it was going to take a year for a client to come on after you met them? Is that just from trial and error? Is that an industry standard? How did you start figuring that kind of concept out?
Yeah, in the industry, like I was saying earlier, it could be that when somebody contacts you at the beginning, it's that they have a requirement that's maybe 6 or 8 months down the road, and sometimes longer, depending on how large of a space that they're looking for. And so having worked on the behind the scenes with that office leasing team and just hearing those conversations and seeing the transactions and how long it took for some of those to take, that was a really good insight for me to be able to see that before I actually got into it. So I knew that there was a process, and every once in a while we'll get people who are, we really need to be in a space in the next 30 or 60 days, and they have like this very short time period, but that's not normal. So yeah, I was lucky to see, I didn't go into it blind. I knew it was going to take some time for sure.
Yeah, another thing that I like what you do is you play the long game, and as opposed to the short game, and that's so important to for the health of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what I have to sometimes tell my landlords too, is that let's look at what's today. Maybe we can look at this proposal and say that this might not make sense today, but what does it look like if you have this lease in place and it's a 5-year lease, and how does that play out in that time? Or the same thing with tenants who are looking for space. Like, yes, you're looking for 1,000 square feet today, but do you plan on growing? And if so, if you have that plan in place, well, then let's look at, well, what do you see in 3 or 5 years and how that looks? And let's sign a lease in a space that makes sense for that long game and not just now. So I think it's important for everybody to kind of keep in mind, what is their plan for the future?
Let's talk quickly as we begin to wrap this up. And actually, as an interviewer, it's a terrible question to ask. Oh, let me tell you about we're wrapping up. No, I want you guys to stay engaged. Bam.
And in conclusion,
here is what I just said. Okay, so people, it seems like if you consume a lot of material, a lot of the world is saying, I'm terrified to go to XYZ business. I'm terrified about the future. We've had 3-ish months of negative. And it's going to be very interesting to see if we see as things start to open, will you start to see 3 months of positive being pounded? I think we know that answer. I think you won't. You'll continue to see more negative side of that. But from your world and from your perspective, what are you doing to persuade, convince your tenants, the businesses in our area? Like, what can they do to start marketing positivity that people will be safe from something that we've been told? And by the way, like, I'm not saying that this isn't a very terrible thing. I'm just saying the world is going to open, and now all these businesses want people to come back in. So what can a business do to start capitalizing and pull those businesses or those customers back in so that they can start bringing in some dollars?
Well, so it's a matter of, it's an individual thing for each business and how they handle things day to day. But I think, first of all, their employees have to feel safe. And so putting in measures in their offices or in their locations where their employees feel like that they are not going to be around or have any issues. So little things like having hand sanitizer everywhere, knowing that people are wiping down countertops behind themselves or whatever that they touch. There you go. You got to have it. And just people maintaining their space and not getting like all up on each other when you're even standing in line, and just making sure first that your employees feel good about that. And then letting the public know what exactly you're doing and be very clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think, Zach, you had an email that went out a while ago that talked about, don't put this big, huge, long thing about all this stuff that you're doing. Just give us the overview, right? So be super clear and concise about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and make people feel like that you have put measures in place that are actually going to work, that it's not going to be some, I mean, I don't even know an example of what it would be that.
Well, so the example was, a lot of people will start copycatting other emails because they feel like they have to do it. And somewhere in there, there's a message that actually they want the world to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a client was telling me that they were trying to do something at another business, and they didn't know, they didn't even know if the business was open, which is ultimately what they were trying to do. And that was hidden in this like 27,000 word email.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, just email people what you want them to know. Hey, we're open. Hey, we're closed. Hey, we're open at this time. This is what you have to do. Don't make it so difficult for people to do the one thing that you want them to do in these situations. And I think people often forget that, like, oh, well, so-and-so competitor that I happen to get their email, they did this, so therefore I need to do that. At the very beginning of this, every single message looked the same.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you look online, about a month and a half ago, everyone started getting on Zoom. So what did people do? They started doing what I call the camouflage marketing, where they started copying what everyone else is doing, and they started Brady bunching all the pictures. So it was just like oh, look, I just had this call with all my people. Why do I need to like engage in that post? It's not engageable, right? It's irrelevant. And so now you're not seeing it because people, I guess, realize that, hey, I didn't want to, this wasn't going to work anymore. So, but tell people what they need to hear and get in front of it. And
Mm-hmm.
by the way, if you guys are interested in information just like that, go to ZachMillerSays.com/newsletter. And every Monday AM at 10:13, you can get my tips and tricks or my one hack of the week. Boom.
Yes, I love it. I love your tips and tricks. Amazing.
Love it. That's one that we'll have to save for the record book. Tim, anything?
I really enjoyed the conversation, Nicole. I appreciate your insight and you showing your vulnerable side. It was nice to get to know you better.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. I'm glad I could hang out with you guys for a little while. And are you going to take a picture of this and
no.
post it?
No.
Okay.
I try not to do what other people do, especially when it becomes like it becomes camouflage marketing, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
basically what happens is everyone sees the same thing. So if you're thinking from a social perspective and people are just, where's my phone? Scrolling, and they keep seeing the same thing over and over again. And by the way, when those Zoom pictures are so small that you have to go like this.
And then I can say, wait a second, that's why so-and-so didn't show up at my Zoom meeting, because they were over here at this one.
There you go. Look at that. The Inside's investigator Nicole Campbell tonight on News 47, whatever. One last question. It looks like we have. How does someone know? You said something earlier about posting. In the last few days, I haven't posted because I didn't know relevant content to post.
Mm-hmm.
World events aside, how do you understand when is a good time and not to post things like when you're having that kind of feeling?
It really just comes down to making sure that I'm putting out something that is relevant to my audience and or would be helpful to them. And if I don't have that, then I don't want to just post a bunch of gibberish that, like you said, will just get lost in it. And that, or somebody's going to say, well, this isn't on brand for her. This is not something that really makes sense coming from her. So I'd rather just not post something.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of telling people that, hey, that post was off brand.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you post that? They're like, well, and I'm like, it's off brand. You don't want that person who you've been fighting for so hard to finally see your post and had nothing to do with the thing that you wanted to do. Rebecca, last question we'll take is, Nicole, if you guys have other questions, ask them in the comments, and Nicole or ourselves will respond offline. Rebecca says, Nicole, do you recommend having a realtor represent you to help negotiate a commercial lease like you would a residential property?
Absolutely. And it will just make your life so much easier, because these brokers do this day in and day out, and they know the market and they know what you can ask for and what makes sense. And you will always save money or get a better deal if you have representation as a tenant rep. And a landlord rep will actually enjoy working with that tenant rep, because it makes their life easier too. Because now I'm not having to handhold somebody and explain things to them when they don't have a broker. So yes, get a tenant rep broker if you're looking to sign a commercial lease. Absolutely.
Bam. What's the best place for people to follow you?
On LinkedIn is where I hang out most of the time. So it's Nicole Campbell 1, because I signed up like 50 years ago and was able to grab that name. So LinkedIn there. And then I also just started on TikTok. I'm not real sure how that's going to go, but I'm going to try it out. And that's Super Trooper, like soup, like Campbell's soup, SOUPER_trooper.
Okay, so because you said this, why? I believe all of your social handles should be the same across the board. So, like for me, Zack Miller says is everything, right? So, why haven't you gone across this? So, Zack Miller says on Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever new product comes out, I sign up and I get the what's the website? Zack Miller says, like, why haven't you moved off of? Why do you have so many conflicting brands in that?
Because I didn't listen to you first. I didn't know that advice. And then also because I thought it would be easier for my name on LinkedIn, so to just keep it my name. But my name's kind of common, so I don't know. Should I fix it?
I think well, like the super thing is interesting to me. Yeah. I think you should, if you're going to do it, change them all right now.
Okay.
What you don't want to do, well, it just becomes hard. Oh, follow me here, follow me there. And the person's like, well, hold on. Was I supposed to go on TikTok and find like Super Trooper? So is it like the movie? Oh no, it's not super, it's soup. And then, so like, what can you do to make it as streamlined, as easy as possible for people? And the earlier that you do it, the better, because then you have to shift everything around. And so that's what I would recommend. And anyone that's listening that has handles all over the place, don't be like a Karate Kid. Like, make it easy. I mean, make it easier for yourself, right? And then I would buy that domain and then brand everything around. What is it? Super what?
Super Trooper.
Yeah. I would brand.
Maybe I can think of a better one.
I like it.
I think it's catchy.
Okay.
But I would try to get rid of that underscore if possible.
Yeah, that's tough. Okay, I'll try. Thanks for the advice.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you guys for listening. As always, actually, there it is right there. Follow Nicole on TikTok, which is an amazingly crazy world out there of people. There's some funny stuff out there. And then Nicole Campbell 1 at LinkedIn. Thanks for your time today, Nicole. If you guys have any other questions or if you want to be a guest on the show, send us a message in the DMs. Slide into the DMs. Thank you all for being with us today. Until next Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to go work out for 7 more days, and so will Tim, and hopefully Nicole will as well.
I will. I'll do it.
We'll have you back on the show to figure out if you will.
Okay.
All right. Until next time, peace and pancakes, y'all.